Hello and welcome back to the channel. I want to have a look at Alfalfa today and see if I can do a bit of a tutorial here on how we go about putting it into a map for Farm Sim 17. Now I've got Thornton Farm here for 17 and I've got a map from 15 which is the country line map version 11. Just one I happen to have in my download folder, so I figured it's got what I need, so I'm going to take it from there. You may need to search around and find an appropriate map. Perhaps from 15, if you've got a map that you know of that has Alfalfa or Luzerne from Farm Sim 17, then go with it, whatever. But when you use one from 17, some of the parts I'm going to show you here you won't need to do, because the DDS files and PNG files and all the rest of it will all automatically, or they will already be converted to work with the map for 17. But I'm going to do it this way so that anybody who wants to know how to do this and take stuff from a map from 15 might get something from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the folder here for the country line map from 15, and I'm going to open up the map01.i3d in Notepad++. I'm going to do this because it's going to give me my path file names and everything else to point me where all of the parts are that I need to take from this particular map. So from the top of the actual i3d here, the Notepad text document here, I'm going to go Control F to bring up my search window. You could also go into search and find. Now I've obviously searched for this a couple of times as I was experimenting with bits and pieces and making sure this all worked. So I've already done a search for Luzerne, but just type it in, make sure you spell it right, and then just click find next, and it will then come down to your first entry here, which is our foliage layer itself. So I'm going to highlight that entire line there and Control C to copy that. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to open up a new text document here in Notepad++. I'm going to paste it in over there. So we'll come back to the one for the country line map and we'll go find next. And this will give us our distance diffuse channels. So what I want to do here is highlight all of those 1 to 6. So I'm going to go Control C to copy those again, bring them over, paste them into my new text document. We'll go find next again. I don't need the windrow. So we'll come down to the actual material here. So again, I'm going to highlight all of that. We will need to adjust some parts in here to make it work correctly within Farm Sim 17, but it will give us our base information that we can work with. So I'm going to copy all of that, come over, create a couple of lines just to separate it, and then we'll just paste that in like so. So we'll come back over, find next again. This is for the windrow, so I don't need that. So we're going to go again, and then we come down to our last part we need to take, which is the actual foliage sublayer. So I'm going to highlight that, Control C to copy it, again create a couple lines and then paste it in like so. Okay, so I've got all I need from the actual 15 map01.i3d, so I'm going to go ahead and close that down. Then what I want to do is actually find where all the parts are within all of this, so I can actually take those textures and whatever else from here. So we can use this information we've just taken from the map01.i3d from the 15 map, the Farm Sim 15 map, and we can check our path file names and that will give us an indication of where they are. So the first one we've got here is our foliage and our foliage Luzerne diffuse. So in this particular 15 map, the country line map, I need to go into the foliage folder, and in here we've got our foliage Luzerne diffuse. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit there so it doesn't start putting stuff all over the place, and I'm just going to drag that out on my desktop, make a copy of it. So the next thing I need to do is then go into textures, foliage, and then the actual distance diffuse channels. So if we go back, textures, foliage, and then we've got our distance diffuse channels in here, so we need to find the ones for Luzerne, which are just here. So I'm going to take all of those 1 through to 6, not including the windrow because I don't need that for this. So again, I'm going to make a copy of that. What I'll do is I'll just drag them out, and we'll just copy them here. And that's what I didn't want it to do, but never mind. So we'll just bring those down, like so. Too much on my desktop again. Never mind, there we go. So we've got what we need from there. So I'll bring that up to there. You may want to create a new folder or something like that, and then put them into a separate folder so it doesn't interfere with anything on your desktop, so you don't start getting confused with loads of other stuff that you've got all over the place. But for now this is okay. I'm just going to do this so we can all see it and everything else on the screen here. Okay, so next thing I want to do here is, just bear with me one moment. Sorry about that, it's just having problems with my capture software. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here is check again what we need next. So we've got all of our bits and pieces there. We've got our texture diffuse channels, whatever else. So for now I can close that down, and I'm going to close that down. Don't need that for now. Might need it again later on, but for now it's okay. So what I want to do now, I'm going to move that up out of the way. So we'll come onto our Thornton Farm map here, and because this is just a unedited version, it comes with very little on it other than what the map creator put on it. So we've got a few scripts in here for some bits and pieces, the mud mod and some animated objects and whatever else, but what we're going to need to do here is actually bring in some other parts to make all of this work. So I'm going to be working with the additional map types version 1.0.0.8. So if I open that up, what I need to do here is bring over the appropriate parts to make this work. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. If you want to know how to do all of this, I have got another video. I may put a link. I don't know how to do annotations, otherwise I would do that, but something I will learn in the future. But I'm just going to do this. I will try to explain it as best I can, but not get into it too deep. There is a video on how to do this on my channel, so go check that out. But so what we need to do here is bring over some parts into this bit here. So I need to bring over all of this stuff from here to here, including the script. So I'm going to highlight the entire lot there, and then I'm going to go Control C to copy that, come back over, Control V to paste it in, and this will bring it into my Thornton Farm map. So we want to merge the folder. Yes. Okay, so now we've brought all the parts over, so I've now got some new different bits and pieces. The bell top's not going to worry about too much. We've got some fill planes, some foliage, extra foliage layers. We don't need all of these, but just for the Luzerne, but it's part of the additional map type script, so I tend to want to bring it over because it will reduce errors on your map and all the rest of it. So we've got some new fruit HUDs and whatever else. And then here I've brought in some fill planes and particle animations, which we'll be editing later on, and then some new tip on ground textures. We should have tip on ground. Yeah, we've got tip on ground here. So this is just for the newer feature, obviously within FS17, so we can tip on ground anywhere that's designated on the map. So we need that part as well. So we need to make some changes there, and we've got our additional map types Lua script as well. So excellent. So what I need to do here is bring over some parts into the mod desk to make all this work. So if I open up the mod desk for the actual map itself, and we'll come down, we've already got some extra source files on this particular map, but if you didn't, then you would need to bring over the tags. And what I'll do is I'll open up the folder here for the additional map types section, the actual bits and pieces in here. So we've got an example for the mod desk, so we'll bring that up, just makes it easier to copy it over. As I said, I've already got my extra source files tags, so I don't need those, but if you didn't have them, then you would need to obviously highlight all of this, bring the whole lot over. I'm just going to bring the actual source file name and the file name over, and then create a new line and add that in like so. There we go. So next thing I want to bring over is the actual additional map type stuff, so I'm going to highlight all of that, Control C to copy it, bring it over, and we'll put it in down here below the 110N section, so we'll paste that in. Now I don't need all of this, so what I'm going to do here is highlight the parts I don't need and delete them, because I'm only adding in the Luzerne. I'm going to leave the line for oat because I'm going to modify that to work with Luzerne, so I'm going to delete all of that. And then what I will do is I'll type in there Luzerne to register our Alfalfa. If you want to call it Luzerne on your map, that's fine. Whatever, I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring over some other text which I can then modify. So we'll just grab one of those, bring that over in the L10N section here, create a couple lines, paste it in, And then what I'm going to do is in here, I'm going to copy that, paste that in there like so. Now it's up to you what you want to call it on the map. If you want to call it Luzerne, then what you would need to do is put Luzerne in there like so, and then on the map it would actually show up as Luzerne in your what do you call it, the little thing down the right hand side there. I can't remember what it's called now, but the whatever that is, and also in your escape menu, and then all the rest of it. So but if you want to call it Alfalfa, then obviously you need to type that in. So up to you, whatever you want to call it. You need to change the text there to match that, what you want it to be called on the map. So I'm just going to call it Alfalfa, and I'm going to copy that, paste that in there like so. Up to you entirely, as I say. I think in German, I'm not sure if in German it's actually called Luzerne, I don't know. But I'm going to leave it like that, because I'm only playing in English, so I don't really care what's in the German part. But if you were creating a map, perhaps maybe you want to find out what it is in the other languages and then add that in, but for me I'm just going to stick with that. So okay, so we've got that there, and all the other parts we've added over, so I don't need that one anymore, so close that down and go ahead and save the mod desk for Thornton Farm here. We'll come back to this a little bit later on, but we need to change a few parts in here, but we'll get to that as we get to it, so not going to worry about that too much at the moment. I'm going to close that one down. I'll close that down. So we've now added all our parts in for the actual additional map type script and all the rest of it to make all of that work. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is obviously work with our foliage layers and all the rest of it. So move that back out of the way. So the first thing I want to do here is go into the foliage folder, and obviously I've got all my bits and pieces in here for the foliage textures. If you wanted to, obviously you could put that in a different folder and then work with that however you want to do that. But I'm going to stick with this because it's got all the other parts in there for the additional map type scripts, so I'm going to stick with that. So what I need to do here is obviously find out what these are and whether they match what I'm bringing over from 15, because you can't just, if you're bringing stuff over from FarmSim 15 to 17, you can't just copy over and put it in the folders, because it won't work. You need to first of all identify what it is and then convert it. So this is a DDS, which is a good start. I need to figure out or find out whether these match this one. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a program called WTV. I'll put a link in the description to this. I've used this before in a previous video, so there is a link there if you want to go to that video, but I will put another link in for you anyway. So what I'm going to do with this program, I'm just going to take the oak rye diffuse, I'm going to bring that over, and I want to just see what the actual format is. So if we come down to the bottom here, we've got a format of DXT5 and it has mipmap. So I need to know that, because if I bring this one in, this one is a DXT3 because it's from FarmSim 15 and it has no mipmap. So I need to make sure that I actually save it in the correct format for it to work correctly in 17. So I'm just going to bring over the oak one again just so we can see what that is. DXT5 with mipmap. So if I minimize that, I can open this up in paint.net. It has the correct size, the format is correct, so I don't need all the actual size of the picture or whatever you want to call this. The DDS file is fine. All you need to do is just resave the format. So I'm going to go up to here and go save. I need to change this to a DXT5 with mipmap, because if we remember on here it is DXT5 with mipmap. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go OK, and that will then change that. If I close that down, we can double check it with our WTV program. Just going to put that in. We now have a DXT5 with mipmap, whereas before it was a DXT3 without. So now what I can do is take that from there and bring it straight into here. No problem. So we'll move that over. Perfect. So we now have our foliage channel in there. No worries. We'll need to change the actual path file name slightly in our i3D, but again we'll get to that in a little bit. So the next thing I want to do here is have a look at the tip on ground. Let's do tip on ground. So we've got our bits and pieces for our tip on ground. So actually we'll come back to that because I need to create a couple of things first to make that work. So What we're going to do first of all, I think, is actually bring in the information, so we set it all up in the map itself. Yeah, let's do it that way. So, okay, so I'll close that down for now. We'll have to use it again later on, but we'll close it down for now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some changes to this here first of all. So, if I open this one up, this is for Thornton Farm. So we'll open the map 01.i3d for Thornton Farm. And you can see here that the foliage textures are actually in the foliage folder. We have this ... which is because it's in the previous folder to the map 01. So we have to go back a stage to get to it. So you have to put that ... in there to make it work. So we need to edit this one up here to match. So in here we go ... like so, and that'll be then the correct path file name. And our distance to fuse channels are slightly different on 17 because we need to go into maps, textures, terrain, distance, and they're in here. So we need to create that path file name for it to work. So what we can do here is change this slightly. So we've got, what I'll do is if I just bring that up like so, and we'll bring this down so we can actually see it. We don't need to worry about the maps, but we need to have textures, terrain, distance. So we've already got textures. So we need to overwrite this one. We need to type in there terrain, and then we have distance, and then the actual foliage channel itself. So now what I can do is copy that one and then paste that in to all of the others. So I don't have to type it every single time, which is good. Okay, so now we have our correct path file names for our distance to fuse channels. We will need to edit them slightly before we can actually use them, but that's fine. We'll get to that later on. So the next thing I want to do here is I'm going to add 100 to the front of every one of these file IDs, because we can't have the same number twice within the map01.i3d. So by changing it to a much larger number than you'd ever have in there, it will automatically update and generate its own numbers. So again, I'm going to copy the 100 and then we'll just paste that in front of all of the others, like so. Then what I need to do is actually come into here and I need to find a material ID that matches the similar setup to what the Luzerne will be. So we'll just choose wheat, which is fine. So if we come back into the map01.i3d for Thornton here, I'm going to go Control F, we'll just type in here wheat, go find next, until we get to a materials ID section, which is just here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of that, I'm going to copy it, bring it back over into my new text document here, create a couple of lines just to separate everything. So what I need to do here is, obviously you can see the differences here. The alpha blend and the frequency are somewhat similar, but the additions of the plant rotate and the cell size, terrain size, scale XZ, scale Y are additions. So we have a couple of choices here. What we can do is obviously change this one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two lines from here, copy those, and then I'm going to bring them up and I'm going to paste them in up here, because the rest of the information is the same. So I don't need to really change too much there, just add in those two additional lines. This makes it somewhat easier, because obviously I would have to make a lot more changes to this with material IDs and so on and so on. So by doing it that way, you sort of cut down on things you do need to change. One other thing I need to change is the custom shader ID. So I need to take that one and then put that into there. So what I can do now is actually take that and delete it, because I don't need it anymore. And then what I need to do is type in there the 100, like so. We put 100 up here like so, and that all then matches in perfect. Now the next part, the foliage sublayer, this is somewhat different again for Farm Sim 17 from 15. In 15 we don't have the growth state time, in 17 we don't have the growth state time as part of the actual information within the map01.i3d. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come further down. So I'm going to continue my search down until we get to the area I want to be in, which is just here for our foliage sublayer. You can choose whichever one you want to do here. I probably would suggest for this, I would say rape is a better one to choose, simply because of the block shape ID. The block shape ID for Luzerne in this case must match rape. So I'm going to copy that line, bring that back over, and we'll paste that in. Now there are some similarities, but there also are several different changes within the way that the information is displayed and laid out for your foliage sublayer from 15 to 17. We have distance map unit size, here we have distance map layers, and obviously the block shape IDs will be different, and we have a gross state time which isn't in 17, and so on and so on. So what I would probably suggest the best thing to do here is to take the Luzerne text from the line of text from 15, copy that, and then overwrite the rape. And then what we need to do is to obviously take the file IDs for our distance diffuse channels and then put them into this line. So I no longer require that one, so I'm going to delete it just so it doesn't confuse anything too much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my material ID from here, copy that, and put that into this line here like so. Then we have our file ID which points up to here, so we don't need to mess about that anymore because we've already set that up. But we do need to have a look at our distance diffuse channels. So if we actually come across to here in our distance map IDs, we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 are the same number. So what I would probably say is, because these are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 20, I will just copy one of them like so, because you'll be scrolling backwards and forwards across the screen otherwise. And then in our distance map IDs, just paste in the same number. This might not work obviously if your file IDs are different numbers. You know, the actual range is a lot different, but because these are numerically set up, then I can do it this way. So we go 1, 2, so I need to change that to a 6, that one to a 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 8 needs to be in there 3 times, so we go 8, 8, 8, 9, and then the N1 needs to be changed to 20, like so. Okay, so we've now got our distance map IDs which all match up to our file IDs, so that will display correctly on screen. So fantastic, we're getting there. Okay, so like I said before, we need to have the block shape ID for rape so that that's displays everything on screen correctly. So taking this line from the map01 on rape will match in perfectly. So what we can do now is add in these text lines into our map i3d for, or map01.i3d for the Thornton Farm. So I'm just going to highlight the file IDs first. We'll copy those. Come back up to the top of the page here, and we'll create a new line under the files tag, and we'll paste it in. Then we need to take our material IDs, so I'm going to do copy all of that. Come back over. I'm going to bring up my search window, and if I type in there materials like so, I've already done this many times, so it's in my drop down, but if you just type in materials, go find next, and then find next again, it will bring you to the bottom of the materials line where you can then add in that information. I will do it at the bottom, not at the top. Up to you, whichever way you do it, doesn't really matter, but I always do it at the bottom. And the reason why I do it at the bottom is because from here I can just scroll down to my foliage multi-layers. If you did it at the top, then you would need to scroll a lot further, so it just makes it a little easier to get to where you need to be. So next thing I have to do here is create a new line, and then I'm going to bring over my new foliage sublayer, so I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste that in like so, and we'll just tidy that up. The important thing is now to change the density map type index so it follows on numerically from the last one on the map. so I can just add a 1 in there, so it now goes 12 and then 13. Now obviously if you have a map which has got a lot of additional or it has some additional fruit types on it already, then you may need to experiment with your map channel offset and your num density map channels. Again, I have explained this in another video. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but in another video I have explained all about the different density map channels that need to be applied and whatever else. So I won't get into this video. This is just showing you how to get Alfalfa or Luzerne into a map. So because I'm only adding in the one additional fruit type, I don't need to make any changes there. Now there is some comments for the chop straw, which this particular map does have. I don't use the chop straw mod. It may be worth it going into the additional map types PDF. So if I go into here as a PDF for your instructions, it may be worth looking through there and just taking the information to do with chop straw and how you need to change your density map channels. I'm not going to do it for this particular video because I say I don't use chop straw, I don't like it. But if you do use it, then you may need to have a bit more of a play around with your density map channels. But again, I'm not going to mess around with that in this particular video. So now I've made all my changes in there and that's all set up. I'm going to go ahead and save, and I'm going to close that down. I don't need this information anymore, so I can close that down. Don't need to save it, so that's all good. Okay, so what I need to do now though is I need to change these density map, not density map, distance diffuse channel PNG files. One, I need to convert them to a DDS, and I need to then understand what format and the size of the file itself needs to be. So again, we're going to go back to our WTV program here. So we'll open that up. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take what I need from the Thornton Farm map, and I'm going to identify what they are laid out as. So if I just take, for example, the barley, and we'll just put that into there, so we can see this is a DXT1 256 by 256 with mipmap, and that should be the same for every one of them. DXT1 256 with mipmap. So what I need to do is obviously convert the PNG files that I took from the Farming Sim 15 map into a DDS and then save it as a DXT1 at 256 by 256 with mipmap. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually open up paint.net first of all, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually highlight all of those. I'm going to drag them into paint.net and I'm going to open them so it opens them as individual files. I'm going to start with this one on the far left here. So first of all I need to go into image and resize it to 256 by 256. And then what I need to do is go save as. I'm going to put it on my desktop so I know where it is. So I need to come down to draw the DDS, the direct draw surface, save, and then I need to obviously change the format to match what we've already got. So DXT1 with mipmap. So go DXT1, make sure your mipmap box is ticked. These, I've never found any of them make any difference whatsoever, so I always stick with that one, the default. And I'm going to go OK. I've done that one, so I can close it. I'm going to go image, resize, 256 by 256, file, save as, change it to a DDS, save. It will remember what I did last time, so I don't need to change it again, but just to make sure it is a DXT1 with mipmap. OK, done that one. Close it. Image, resize, 256 by 256. File, save as, DDS, save, DXT1 with mipmap. Close that one. Image, resize, 256 by 256. It's very repetitive, but it has to be done to make this work. Save as, change it to a DDS, save, DXT1 with mipmap. Close that one, and we go again. Save as, DDS, save, DXT1 mipmap. Close, and again, 256 by 256. File, save as, oops, DDS, save, DXT1 mipmap, and we're done. close down paint.net, and we can now see we've got all of our newly created DDS files, and if you want you can open those up and have a look at them. There we go. And if you want to just make sure, you can open up WTV, drag one in, DXT1 256 with map. Perfect. So what I can do now is take all of those, Control X to cut, come over to my distance, drain distance folder in Thornton Farm, paste them in. Perfect. So now they are all set up in that particular folder just here. Don't need to make any further changes there. Excellent. So the next thing I need to do is obviously check that my foliage works correctly within the map itself. That's what I'm going to do next. So I don't need those, so I'm going to put them in the recycle bin. So I'm going to go into the maps folder, map01, and we'll open this up in Giants Editor. So once this is open, what we can do now is just test to make sure that it does actually paint down on the map our Luzerne correctly and all the foliage channels work the way they're meant to work. Now you can see I'm under the map because I've not made any edits to this map whatsoever. It's a completely fresh download. I downloaded it today just before I did this video. So there's nothing else on the map any different than what you would have if you were downloading it yourself. So I'm going to come over to a field here where I can actually see the texture layers being painted down correctly. So have my train editing window open. If you don't have this open, window, train editing. The default parts here should be fine, but just make sure you're on whatever mouse button you use to add. And then we come down to our foliage layer painting, and in our foliage layer we click on the drop down and we should have Luzerne, which we do. Excellent. So we need to click on that, and we're going to go for our foliage channels. So we need to select our terrain foliage paint mode. The first one we're going to do is 5. 4 is the first one, but that won't show up on the map because it is seeded, so you won't see anything on the map. So 5 is the first one we need to do. So if we zoom in a little bit, because it will be short, so we need to paint that on the map. Whoops, there we go. So that's on the map there like so. Next one we need to do is 4 and 5. So we put that on the map. Then we go 6, like so, 5 and 6, and 4, 5 and 6. So we have all of our different textures for our different growth stages there like so. And the last one, or I say last one, is actually 2 more, but we have this one which is our withered. And then we also have 4 and 7 which is our cut short, like so. Okay, so we've tested all of the bits and pieces. If we zoom out we can have a look and see what the distance channels look like, so we can see what they are. So we can see clearly they do actually work. Brilliant, no problems. So once you've actually tested it, what I would recommend is you actually close down the map, reopen it in Giants Editor. So we closed it down, didn't save anything, and I've just reopened it again. So it'll reopen underneath the map again where you will be if you open the map for the first time in Giants Editor. And then what we need to do once it's opened up, we just need to click Save. Making sure in your console there are no errors listed. If this isn't open, you again go Window and Console. This will bring up this particular window down the bottom here. And we can look in there and see if there are any errors, that it's not been able to find certain things. There's no errors, so that's looking good. So what I'm going to do here is just go Save. And then once we've saved this, we can work on the other parts. Now this is where it gets a little bit more technical. And we need to look at our, so we'll close that down. So we need to look into our tip on ground, but first of all what we need to do is actually create a texture that we're going to be working with. So what you need to do now is find a texture that you're comfortable with, that's going to work with you for your Luzerne. So this can be pretty much anything you want it to be really. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into, let's see what we've got here. Yeah, I'm going to take the straw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. Now you can use whatever you want to use. It's up to you entirely. It's no, no restrictions on anything. Use whatever you're comfortable with. You may need to experiment with it a little bit and then go from there. So if we come into the tip-on ground, what we've got here is we've got a diffuse, a normal, and a distance diffuse. So we've copied over the straw diffuse. So what we need to do is make a couple of changes to that first, because if I open this up in paint.net, obviously I've got straw. I want it to represent something that looks more like Luzerne, to a point at least anyway. So for me, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into adjustments. I'm going to go to hue and saturation. I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to drag this slider across to make it somewhat greener. You can obviously experiment with this however you want to do that. So I'm going to bring it into somewhere, again for the video this will be perfectly fine. So somewhere around abouts there, and I'm going to click OK. It may not represent Luzerne exactly, but it's going to be good enough, for the video at least. So before I save it, what I need to do is bring up my WTV program again, because I need to just double check what this is actually going to be saved as. So if we take the millet, for example, DXT5 with mipmap, and it's 512 by 512. So if we bring this up, this is 512 by 512. So what I need to do here is go save DXT5 with mipmap. OK. And we can close that down. Okay, so you may find that you could use perhaps maybe another normal channel. So if we go back into maps, P systems, particle systems, fill planes, we have a straw normal here. So if you wanted to, you could copy that one out. We'll try this and experiment. I have actually got a normal map generator. If I open this up, I'll show you what I mean. This will actually convert the diffuse channel. It's not the best way of doing it, I grant you that, but it does work. It will convert the diffuse channel into a normal and specular. I'll show you what I mean. If I bring that one in, this is what we have for our normal, and if our diffuse, and if I then go normal, specular, and displacement, it actually will create them for me. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to leave it as it is with the straw for now, just to make it a little easier, and we'll see what happens. So you can do what I've done there and create your diffuse by opening it in paint.net and adjusting the hue and saturation to give you a color that represents something that looks similar to what you're trying to get out of it for Luzerne. Okay, so we need to change obviously this because I don't want to call it straw, so we need to change it. So in here I'm going to change this to Luzerne. And then what I'll do is I'll just copy that. And then I'll just change this one as well. Like so. So if I then bring these over into the tip on ground folder. So I'll bring those over, move here. Then what I need to do is bring over the diffuse, copy that back out again. And in here I need to then add in the distance. Again with our WTV program, need to just double check what the distance channel is going to be, so it doesn't matter which one we choose. So this is a DXT1 at 256, 256, and it's got mipmap. So again I need to open this up. This is in 512 by 512, so I need to resize it 256 by 256. OK, I need to save it, and it needs to be saved as a DXT1 with mipmap. So I change it to DXT1 with mipmap. OK, done. Close that down. I can then bring that in like so. So we now have our Luzerne. This is obviously going to be representing straw, but to be honest with you, it won't really matter as a normal channel. We have our diffuse, which is going to represent our Luzerne, and we have our Luzerne distance diffuse for our tip on ground function. Excellent. So we should have pretty much what we want there, I hope, at least. We will test this. If it doesn't work, then you'll need to obviously experiment with it and change it a little bit. But we're going to work with this for now. Okay, so if we come back out again. So what we have now then is some parts we need to change within the particle systems themselves. So I'm going to grab a drink and then I'll be back when we get into that. So the next part we need to look at is our fill planes and particle animations for our Luzerne. So we've added over the additional map type sections and all the rest of bits and pieces. And if we go into our P systems folder here, we have our fill planes and particle animations, or particle systems, whatever you want to call them. So in here we have our fill planes, and this is basically going to give us everything we would have in our tipper trailers and shovel loaders and whatever else. And in this particular one we only have one i3D, which is our fill plane material holder. So what we need to do here is actually create our fill plane for Luzerne. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up in Giants Editor. So we double click this, open it up in Giants Editor. And as you can see in our scenegraph here, close that down, we have our fill planes and all of their bits and pieces. If you want to have a bit of a play around or look at this, if you have your material window open over here, again, if this isn't open, window, and then bring up your material editor window and you'll get this. If you open them up, click on them, it will show you your diffuse, your normal and your specular channels, and then any custom shaders that may go with that. Okay, so you can have a look through those if you want to. What I'm going to do here though is I'm going to just take one. So we'll just take the millet. Doesn't really matter. I would suggest something like compost might not necessarily work very well, but any of your others like your millet, triticale, sand probably not. But you know, again, this is all experimentation. You need to have a play around and get the result that you want out of it. So for me, I'm going to choose millet. So what I need to do is export this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into File, I'm going to go Export Selection. Now what I need to do here is make sure I'm in the right folder. So I'll go back to the desktop here, Thornton Farm, Maps, P Systems, Fill Planes. And in this particular folder, what I need to do here is type in Luzerne. And I'm going to click Save, because I want to create a new fill plane. So if we minimize that one down, we've now got our new i3D, but we need to make some changes here, because obviously that's not going to work. So we need to create our fill plane, what it's actually going to look like within the map itself. So if we come back to our tip on ground, what we had earlier on, we created our Luzerne section here. So what we can do is take those, I'm going to bring those out and copy them. Now if we go back into our Maps, P Systems, Fill Planes, in this particular one we have a normal and a specular. We don't have a specular, so we're going to hope that something else works. Again, this, you know, if you can find it, this program is brilliant because it will create what you need without having to use something else. I do not have a link to that. I've had it for a very long time when I was experimenting with FS17, and I really can't remember where I got it from, and it took me a really long time to find it actually through searching on Google. So you know, if you can, use something else, but possibly you might be able to find something that works for you. GIMP may be a better option. I never had much success with that program, so I went for a different route. But anyway, not going to get into that. So what I need to do is, again, obviously identify what these are, because it's very important that you don't just start copying and pasting stuff around. You need to identify what they are first, because if you have a DXT3 and this is a DXT1, it won't show up properly on your map. It won't show up properly in your fill planes and all the rest of it. You'll end up with errors, so, or texture glitches. So again, what I'm going to do is refer back to my WTV program here. I'm going to take the diffuse, and we have a DXT5 512 by 512, and it's got mipmap. So if I take the diffuse, luckily this is the same. Excellent. So, and if we want to, we can check our normal as well, just to make sure. So we'll take a normal DXT1 with mipmap, we'll take the normal DXT1 with mipmap. Excellent. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take those, cut them, paste them in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose something from within here that might work. So let's take the compost. So we'll drag this one out, copy it, and we'll change this to Luzerne. like so. And then we can take that one, cut it, paste it back in. So now we have our loosen diffuse, loosen normal and specular, so we can have a look at those. Might have to experiment with that one, not sure, we'll see how that looks. But there we go, so we've got what we need in there. So the next thing we need to do is obviously change our i3D. So before we import it, we need to right click, open up in Notepad++. We have some bits and pieces in here, so what we need to do here is obviously change this. So I'm going to change this one to loosen. And I'm going to take that, copy it, and overwrite it with all of the others. Like so. We have our shaders, which are already in the folder, so we don't need to worry about those, they're already in here, so they're fine. We can leave that as it is. The only other thing we need to look at here though is the actual HUD, so we need to have a bit of a play with that. So I'm going to minimize this for now. So if we go back to our FS17 map and we locate where the actual HUDs are, so if we come down to our additional maps, so we've got map 01 HUDs, fruit HUDs. So we're just trying to get the path file names, so we go map 01 HUDs, fruit HUDs. So we need to take our Luzerne, so we'll take this one and this one, don't need any of the others. So we'll bring those over, copy them, close that down. If we go back into our HUDs here, we need to double check what that format is. So we'll take our compost, DXT3 256 by 256, DXT3 256 256, no map. So excellent, so that one can actually go straight in. So we're going to copy it over because it's called a fruit, not a fill. And we need to then change that text to fill, like so. Then we need to go back into our Notepad++, and we need to change this obviously to loosen. So what I will do is I'll just take that, copy it, come over here, paste it in. Excellent. Now what I would probably do here is I would change all of the information in here so that anything that shows up as millet, so down here we've got millet, so we need to change that. We need to come down to here, change this to loosen, come down, change this one, this one, this one. So everything matches up as loosen and not millet. So we've got our millet plain material, so we need to change that one to loosen and this one to loosen. So everything shows up as loosen, aka alfalfa. Okay, so now that we've got all the parts changed in there, we can go ahead and save. Close that down. If we then go back into our fill planes, I would highly recommend that you open up your newly created i3D in Giants Editor and just make sure that there are no errors within your console. If there are no errors, chances are you've done everything okay so far. I would also recommend that you bring up your user attributes window, click on your Luzerne, open it up, and you can then check your fill types and all the rest of it. And again, if you want to, you can have a look at your material editing and check your diffuse channels and all the rest of it. Make sure your custom shader is in place and whatever else. Okay, so we've got no errors and everything there looks pretty good. So we close that down, don't need to save it. Again, what I'm going to go do now is I'm going to come back into my, excuse me one moment. Sorry about that, I had to sneeze. So what I need to do now is obviously bring this into my fill planes material holder. So I'm going to go File, Import. Make sure we're in the right folder, which we are. Double click on our Luzerne. Excellent, that brings it in. So I need to then right click on it and go Move Up. This will then bring it into the actual proper place within the scintigraph. Excellent, so we've got all of our parts in there where we need them. Click Save. Close it down. We are done with our fill plane. I'd highly recommend again that you highlight the actual i3D and the i3D shapes for this particular Luzerne, what we created earlier, and just delete them. We don't need them to be there, just takes up space and they're not required, so we can get rid of those. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go back into here. So we've got our fruit HUDs. We'll just sort of come back to this, but we need to obviously add these in. So we've got some fruit HUDs which we brought over from 15, and we've got our HUD fruit Lucerne diffuse, DDS, and we've got our small, which is what we should have for all of the others. Excellent. So if we look through these, what we will have is we've got a HUD fruit oat there, and we've also got a HUD fill oat. So what we need to do is obviously create what we need from these. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just double check that they are in the right format. So we'll just take the fruit, so we'll go HUD fruit DXT3, that's a DXT3, no mipmap, so that's good. The small DXT3 without mipmap, and this one is DXT3 without mipmap. So we can just take these, copy them, and then bring them straight over into there like so. Excellent. The reason why I've copied them is because now what I need to do is obviously change the text in here. So I need to change this to fill, and we need to change this one to fill as well, from fruit. So we can do that like so, and we can then take them again, and this time I'm going to cut them and paste them, and we'll put them into there like that. So we should now have our HUD fill Lucerne and our HUD fill Lucerne small, and we also have the same again but as a fruit somewhere down here. There we go, like so. So they should all match up now perfectly fine. Excellent. Okay, so now we've done that, we're going to go back into maps, P systems, done our fill planes. So now we need to do is concentrate on our particle animations. Now the particular setup that I'm going to do for how we harvest the Lucerne, we don't need cutter effects because it's going to be using the forage harvester, so we don't need to really worry about that. But we do need our effect map material holder and our particle map material holder to work for everything to come together. So I'm going to open up the effect map material holder here in Giants Editor. There are quite a few in here that we need to change. So we're going to start with the unloading. Again, I would recommend that you choose something like millet or oat. Don't choose the compost, seed, sand, or whatever else. So I'm going to choose the millet again. I'm going to go File, Export Selection. Make sure I'm in the right folder, which I'm not, so I need to go back to P Systems and then Particle Systems. And again, I'm going to type in here Lucerne and save. So now what we need to do is have our fill planes in place, because if we open this in Notepad++, you can see we've got fill plane of millet diffuse. But we don't want millet, we want Lucerne. So we need to go back into our tip on ground and take our Lucerne diffuse and Lucerne normal. So we're going to copy those, come back over into our maps, P systems, particle systems, fill planes, and paste them in there like so. So they match the others with our normal and our diffuse channel. Now in this particular case, on this i3D, we only need a diffuse, we don't need a normal because it's using the FX grain normal, but the other part will come in later on. So this one we can now change to Lucerne, like so, and again I would recommend that you take the Lucerne text and then anything that's got millet on it, override it with the Lucerne. So we'll take this one and this one. Change all of these. And we need to change our fill type to Lucerne as well. Okay, so now we've got all of those set up in there. We can go ahead and save. We'll close that down. And again, we need to just double check that that's set up correctly. So we open our newly created Luzerne i3D in Giants Editor. And again, we need to check down the bottom here, just make sure there are no errors. Now if you want to here with it highlighted, you can zoom in and you can check the actual texture, what we will be seeing on screen in the game. That's what it will look like. I don't think it looks too bad. Again, it will come down to a bit of experimentation, what you want to get out of it. You can change the colour however you want to get it the way you want it. But for now, for this video, that will do fine. So I'm going to close that, don't need to save it. So we go back into our Particle Systems Effect Material Holder. I need to bring this in. So again, I'm going to go File, Import, in the right folder, Luzerne. Then we need to highlight it in the Cinegraph, Control X, highlight unloading, Control V, paste it in. Done. Moving on to the next one. So we've got smoke. Again, for this, all of them are going to be the same when it comes to smoke. So we don't need to export it, we can just make a copy of it. So we're going to go and choose Millet, Control D to make a copy. Then I need to change this to Luzerne. So over here I'm going to type in my Luzerne, tab across to make the change. I'm going to open it up. Again, I'm going to change this to Luzerne. So just make sure I get what I need and not too much. There we go. So we'll change this to Luzerne, tab across. We need to bring up our user attributes, change the actual fill type to Luzerne, tab across, make sure we lock in the change. Excellent, done. Don't need to make any more changes there. We've now got all of our Luzerne set up with the smoke effect. So we've got that part. Straw won't come into that. Soil is not required. Sprayer is not required. Then we need to look at our pipe. So again, I'm going to take Millet. First of all, though, we need to delete the old i3D and the old i3D shapes because we're going to use the same name again. So we get rid of that. With our Millet selected, File, Export Selection, make sure we're in the right folder, and again we're going to go Luzerne, save. You can minimize that. Go back into our Particles folder. We'll open this in Notepad++. In this particular case, we do have a normal as well as a diffuse. So I need to change these to Luzerne, like so. We can take that text, copy it, and then paste it over everything else that has to do with Millet. Okay, so now that we've got all that set up, we can go ahead and save that, close it down, double click on it, open it in Giants Editor just to make sure that there are no errors. Again, as I said before, there are none. Excellent, so we don't need to go any further there. We close that down, reopen up our material holder, File, Import, double click on the Luzerne, bring it into the material holder for our effect map, highlight it, Control X, pipe, Control V, done. It's showing up as Luzerne in our user attributes. Everything is set up there as we want it. Excellent, so we can close that one down. Next one we're going to do is belt. So again, I'm going to take Millet. We need to remove our i3D and i3D shapes for Luzerne again, because again we're going to call it the same thing. So with Millet under belt selected, File, Export Selection, and we're going to put Luzerne in there. Save it, minimize, go back into the folder, open this in Notepad++, and again we need to change all of these. So Luzerne, anything that has to do with Millet we want to overwrite with Luzerne, whoops. Okay, so now that we've got everything there set up under Luzerne, like so, we can go ahead and save. Close that down again. We'll open this in Giants Editor just to make sure there are no errors. It's always important to do this, I think, because once you've imported it into the actual effect material holder or whatever you're doing, fill planes and all the rest of it, once you've imported it, it's too late then. It's much harder to get it out. If you find the error now, it just makes everything a little easier. Okay, so there is one thing there that's not quite set up right, so I need to change that. We can do that here in Giants Editor. So we'll come over to our attributes, and I need to change this to Luzerne, tab across, change is done. We'll click save, we'll close. This will update the i3D, so we can double check that, and it has updated it just here. We changed this from millet, one I missed. So we can now close that, done. Go back into our material holder for effect map, file, import, double click on the Luzerne, highlight in the scenegraph, Control X, belt, Control V, paste it in. Done. Then we need to come down to our leveler. So again we need to delete the i3D and i3D shapes for Luzerne. Come back over, we'll choose millet again, file, export selection, put in our Luzerne, save, minimize, open in Notepad++, I need to change these again, change everything to do with millet, so do that, millet, and again there, make sure we've got more this time, hopefully, looks good, save, close, again open it in Giants Editor just to make sure, no errors, just double check, field type is correct, yep, close it down, go back into our material holder for effect map, file, import, double click on Luzerne, highlight it, Control X, click on leveler, Control V. Done. Okay, so we are done with this particular section. Save. Close it down. We are now done with our effect map material holder. Again, we need to highlight the Luzerne and Luzerne i3D shapes, delete them, close that down. So last of all here we need to open up our particle map material holder. So we open this in Giants Editor. Now there's only one thing we need to do in here, and this is for unloading particles. So because there are no unloading particles already in this particular setup, we need to find some that will work. So I'm going to minimize this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into computer, I'm going to go into my Steam apps, common, farm and simulator, data, particle systems. Scroll down, we've got our particle material holder, which matches the one that we're in now, particle map material holder. Slightly different spelling, but it's the same thing. So we need to take what we need from this one and bring over into the one we're going to be using. So I'm going to open this one up in Giants Editor. Now it's very important that you don't save when you come out of Giants Editor, because this is the actual main folder, the main folder for Farming Simulator, whether you're using it through Steam or not. If you start changing stuff in here, when you go onto a multiplayer server, you'll probably find it won't work, because yours will be saved different than everybody else's, and it's very important that you don't do that. So when we come out of this, we need to make sure we don't change anything within this particular i3D, because it will mess up your multiplayer stuff. So in our unloading particles, remember in our other one we don't have anything in there, so in this one I need to take what I need and bring over into the one I've got. So for this one I'm going to choose grass. So I'm going to choose the grass, highlight it in the scenegraph, going to go File, Export Selection with Files, because I've got nothing, I've got no DDS files, no nothing, so I need to, in this case, go Export Selection with Files. I'm going to go onto my desktop, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to paste in there Luzerne. I'm going to open the folder, I'm going to type in, paste in there Luzerne. If you don't have it in your clipboard, then you type it in, whatever. And I'm going to click Save. And then when it says, do I want to get the parent directory structure? No, I don't want that. I've got what I need. close. Don't save it, don't move it, don't do anything. You don't need to move the camera, you don't need to move around within the Giants Editor session. You're just going to export something out of it and close it down. Do not make any changes, because as I say, it will mess up your multiplayer stuff. And you'll then have to uninstall the game and reinstall it again for it to work. So there you go. Close it down. Don't need that anymore. We've now got our new Luzerne on our desktop. So what I need to do now is obviously bring that over into what I've got here. So if I open this folder up, we've got some parts in here. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take all of that. I don't need the shaders because I've already got those over here. So I'm going to take all of that. I'm going to go Control X to cut it, bring it over, Control V to paste it in. I'm going to close that down. I don't need that folder anymore. It was just temporary to create what I needed. So I'm going to open this up in Notepad++. You can see we've got our grass diffuse, which we brought over, which is our textures. So we've got our diffuse and our normal, and we've got our shaders. So we need to just double check all of those. So if I shut that one down, we've got our shaders, PS color shader, which is what we have here. And we've got our FX grass diffuse, which we just brought over, and our normal channel. So everything there shows up as we need it. So we don't need to make any changes in any of that stuff. I would leave the rest of it as it is. We don't need to change any of that. The only thing we need to change is the fill type. So we come down to grass windrow, and we need to change that to Luzerne. I don't have it in my clipboard anymore, so I'll just type it in. We need to change that to Luzerne. Everything else I would probably leave the same. If you really wanted to, you could change the grass name here, so we could do that like so. But everything else I would leave as it is. Don't need to change anything else there. I click Save, close that down, double click on the Luzerne, open it up in Giants Editor. Just make sure there are no errors, again as always, before we import it. There are none. Excellent. Again, we can come in here and just double check that our fill type is correct, which it is under Luzerne. And we can also check our diffuse channels if we want to, and all the rest of it in our material editing. Not going to do that. Everything there is set up as I want it to be. So we'll close that down. I'm going to bring up our particle systems or particle map material holder. File, import, double click on the Luzerne, highlight it in the cinegraph, Control X, come up to unloading particles, Control V, paste it in. There's nothing else there that we need to worry about with it when it comes to Luzerne. If we were working with other fruit types, then we may need to make some more changes. But in this particular case for Luzerne, aka Alfalfa, we do not. Save. Close it down. Don't need the WTV program anymore, so that's good. So now we have all of our particle systems set up and all of our fill planes as we need them to be for the map. We've also done our tip on ground. We've got our textures and everything else. If we want to, we can go back into the map and just make sure that everything is still where it's meant to be. So we now have our field full of Alfalfa, Luzerne, whatever you want to call it. So I've got all that set up in there, and then what I'll do is we'll get out of this and we'll go to the mod desk and we'll make a couple changes there just to make sure that everything is set up that we can actually harvest this the way we want to. So I will see you in a little bit when we get back into the mod desk and onto desktop. Okay, so we're back on the desktop here. I've brought up the moddesk.xml. So if we scroll down through here, the information that we added in earlier on in the video, we've got our fruit type Luzerne, and we're going to just quickly go through this. So need seeding true, allow seeding true, use seeding width false, etc, etc. Aligned to some would be something like sunflowers, so we don't need to mess about with that. Minimum growth stage, maximum growth state, cut state. Now, one of the things I will say here, cut state is 8. If you wanted to put alfalfa down and then have it regrow again like grass, you would need to change this to 1. If you want to cut it and then have to reseed it again, leave it at 8. So I'm going to say that again. If you want to plant Luzerne or alfalfa and then have it that you can it will regrow on its own. Change this to 1. If you want to harvest it and then have to reseed it every single time, leave it at 8. Hopefully that makes sense. Allow partial growth state, false, we'll leave that as is. Price per litre is not really important because we're not going to actually sell any of it, we're just going to use it for certain functions. Litre per square metre, this is something you will need to experiment with to get what you want out of it. For me, I would probably say, because this was based on oats, so I would probably say 2.5 litres per square metre is a good number. It works for me. I would just, again, experiment with that and see what you get out of it. But for me, that works best. Seed usage per square metre, again, that'll be on you to experiment with. Again, based on the information we took, this was on oats. So, and this is a grass seed, if you like, so it may use less than what it would for oats. I honestly don't know, but again, you need to experiment with that and see what you come up with. Show on price table, we're going to change that to false because I don't need it to be showed on the price table because we're not actually selling it. Show on map, yes, we want to leave that as it is. Mass per litre, again, you'll need to experiment with that a little bit. I would probably leave it as it is, and then just to start off with at least, and then change it as you want to. Now the mass is obviously the weight, so if you increase it too much, then you're not going to be able to pick it up in a smaller trailer or whatever else, your tractor. If you're working with smaller machinery, it just won't be able to pull it because it'll weigh too much. So again, I would probably leave it as it is based on the oats that we took this information from. Maximal physical surface angle, we'll leave that as it is. Use for field job, again, that's something you'll need to experiment with to see whether that works for you or not, because we're going to be using certain equipment, so you'll just need to work out whether the game understands what it needs to work with properly, because it's going to be working with a forage harvester. So forage harvesters obviously don't have a fill capacity, at least not to my knowledge, not standard ones anyway, not the ones in game. So I'm not quite sure how that would work. The equipment that it would give you, I don't know how that would work, because you would need a forage harvester, the header, and a trailer to obviously collect the Luzerne, or aka Alfalfa. So for me, I would probably select false in there, because you're going to be taking this for a certain purpose. You're going to be using it for the way I'm going to be setting it up. You're going to be using it for animal feed, the cow power feed, and also we're going to be using it to then create silage. So I'm going to say changing it to false would be my suggestion. I think it would work better that way. But again, that'll be on you to experiment with. Minimum forage growth stage, we're going to leave that as it is. Withering growth stage, again, you need to work with that and experiment to see what works for you. Growth state time, I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, going back to what we did discuss just a minute ago, what I said earlier on with the cut state, if you were going to change that to 1 so it regrows on its own, you don't have to reseed it every time, for perhaps maybe a realistic sort of scenario situation, you may want to increase this so it takes longer to grow. Otherwise you're going to be, it may be a bit of a cheaty sort of situation where it grows really, really quickly and you can just go out and harvest it for free because you've not had to then reseed it every single time, and it will just cost you a little bit in machinery and fuel. So you may want to limit the amount that you can get by increasing the growth state time to a much higher number, so that you don't get that ability to harvest it on a regular basis. Again, that's something you'll need to experiment with. Reset spray, that basically is once you've harvested it, so if you seed it, spray it with your fertilizer, then harvest it, it will reset it so it won't be fertilized again for the next time round. Again, this comes back to your cut states. So if you have a cut state of 1, so it regrows on its own, increase your growth state time to a high number, reset the spray to true, so you do need to re-fertilize it every time. Again, that's going to be on you to experiment with to get what you want out of it. Ground type change, growth state, we'll leave that as it is. We'll leave that one as is. It's not an earth root. Prepared holland, we can change that if we want to from oats. It's not required because it's obviously it's not an earth root, but you know, not lavender, you muppet. Lucerne, there we go. So yeah, if you want to change it, then by all means do so, but because we've left this at false, it will be a little bit irrelevant. But for, you know, to keep everything the way it's, you know, to represent the fruit type that we're putting on the map, you might want to change it so it matches, because it could get a little bit confusing later on as you add more into your map. So we've got minimum prepared, yeah, we don't need to change that one, don't need to change that one. Prepared growth state has windrow, we need to change that to false because it doesn't have a windrow. Can leave that as it is, don't need to worry about that. Don't need to worry about any of that. Has straw, false. Has fill, true. Has materials, true. Has particles, true. Use heap, true. True for fill categories. And then we can change our categories. So again, we need to change these. So we don't want it in an auger wagon. We don't want it in a train wagon. I would like it on fork so I can put it in a bucket if I don't need to. Forage wagon we need. Forage harvester we need. Combine we don't need. So I'm going to get rid of that. Making sure we have a space between each so it recognises the difference. So we've got that one. To fruit groups, true. Fruit group type. Sowing machine, grain header, direct cutter. We don't need grain header, but we do need the other parts. So we'll do that. Is cow base feed. Now this will be on you to experiment again. A lot of experimenting going on, but you know, you need to have a play around with these to get what you want out of it. So base feed false, change that to true if you want to. I think that is straw maybe, I'm not entirely sure. The cow base feed I think is straw. So if you change that to true, then you know that might cause some conflicts then if you, with your straw, I don't know, need to experiment with that. So we've got use as cow grass, again change that to true if you want to. For me, I'm going to use the power food because I think it's going to be, you know, alfalfa I think is recognised as a cow feed, similar to the silage, so I'm going to work with that. So I'm going to change this to true, so it uses the alfalfa or lucerne as a power feed for my cows. So I'm going to do that. Again, you know, if you want to experiment with your sheep and your pigs, then you can change those. So if you wanted to use it as a sheep grass, you could change that to true, so you could feed them alfalfa as well as grass. If you want to use it as the base feed for your pigs, grain probably wouldn't really work too well, but if you wanted to use it as a protein for your pigs, change it to that. I'm going to leave that as it is. So now we need to change this one. Fill type conversion, we need to change that to false because we don't want it to change it to chaff. We want to leave it as lucerne. So we need to change that to false. Come across. It doesn't have bales, so we need to leave that as false. Come across. And all the rest of it we can leave as it is. Again, for just to keep everything in sync, if you wanted to here again, for that you could change it to lucerne. It's not required because it doesn't have a windrow, but if you want to, you can change that. Just again, as I say, when you add more and more stuff into a map, when you come back to it, you can look at this and it tends not to then get quite so confusing, because when we're all the way across here, we can't see what's over here. So if I was over here, I could quickly look at that and go, oh yeah, we're looking at lucerne. So, you know, it gives me an idea of what we're looking at. When you get 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of different fruit types you've added on the map, you will need to, for me at least, I find it better if everything is kept in sync with the actual fruit type that we're looking at and adding into the map. But that's just the way I want to do it. So anyway, so we've now made our changes within our mod desk, so we can go ahead and save that. So just before we get into game, we need to make one further change here. We've added all of our new particle systems and fill planes, but we need to obviously tell the map where they're going to be. So if we go into the map folder, we've got a map01.xml. This may be different for you, and it lists all of our particle systems and all the rest of it, fill planes and bits and pieces. This is the standard Giants versions of the particle systems because it's got the $data, $data, whatever else. But we need to add in our own here because we've obviously created some different ones. So if we go back into our additional maps section here, we've got a map.xml entry section. So if we open that up, we'll open that up in Notepad++, just so it looks a bit easier to read and whatever else. And you can see here, this is what we've already got, these sections here, and I can match those up with what we've got there. And if I actually change the language here so it actually looks the same, there we go. So we've got all of these parts already. What we need to do is add in these parts here, so we end up with this. If we don't add these lines of text into our map01.xml, again it may be called something different for you, then it won't know where to find them, and then it won't obviously display what we've edited and changed and added into those particle systems and fill planes. So what I'm going to do with these particular items highlighted here, I'm going to Control-C to copy those. I'm going to come back over to the map01.xml for the Thornton Farm map. I'm going to create a new line, and then I'm going to paste those in, and I'm just going to tidy them up so they all line up and look a little bit better, like so. That's all we need to do there to make all of those parts work, the particle animations and fill planes. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Don't need that anymore. I'm going to close that down. Don't need my map01.xml open any further, so I can close that. We'll close that down, and we're then done with all of that, so we can close that down. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into game, and we will test all this out, and hopefully if all the parts are joined together correctly, which I'm sure they are, we will have a working particle and fill plane system for our Alfalfa elk, aka Luzerne. So I'll see you in a little bit when we get into game. Okay, so here we are now in game on the map, and we can see we've got our Alfalfa all showing up perfectly on the map, which is a good start. So I've gone ahead and bought the New Holland forage harvester and header, and also a forage wagon, loading wagon, whatever you want to call it, to collect this Alfalfa, aka Luzerne, into. So we'll jump into here, we'll get it started up. I'll just switch over to the actual harvester. We'll get the pipe up, and we'll switch it on. With any luck, everything should come out as we want it to. So we have our newly created particle animation, which I don't think looks too bad. And we should have a fill plane, so if we just close that down, we have a fill plane. We'll jump out, just get up into the actual unit here. Here we go, we have our fill plane. Doesn't look too bad, I don't think. So there we go, we have everything working as we want it to. So I think it's pretty good actually. We're getting quite a lot, you know, the old counter's going up in the corner here, quite rapid. It shows as Alfalfa. If I go into the escape menu here, we have our field 12 showing as Alfalfa. If we click on that, it goes away. So we've got all our parts there showing up okay. Growth status is showing ready to harvest. It's probably about right, 75% according to the Farmer's Touch. I don't think this field is fertilised. No, it's not. So obviously if you were to fertilise the field, you know, you would probably get a fair bit more out of it than what we're getting for this particular run. But you know, again, that's down to you on how you set up your cut states and your fertiliser settings and all the rest of it. But it's working as I expected it to, or hoped it would do, I should say. Probably better to say that. But yeah, there we go. So it's all in the game, working okie dokie. So again, go into the escape menu here, and we set this up so that we can use this as a power food. So we have on our cows here power food and alfalfa. So if I was to harvest this field, we would then be able to go and take that over to the cows. I'm not going to do that in the video. It just makes it, I think this has probably gone on for far too long already. It is a very, very involved setup, what you need to change and what you need to add in to get all this working. Now I've set this up specifically just for power food. There's not much more you can really do with the alfalfa. If you want to change it into silage, there will be a script that you'll need to add in, which I will show you that next. we'll get into that in a little bit once we get back out onto the desktop. I just wanted to get it into the map, get into game, and show you that it does actually work. It is in the game, it is harvestable, and all the rest of it. Again, you know, going back to what I said earlier on, the actual textures that you create for your fill planes and particle animations and all the other stuff, that'll be on you to experiment with a little bit. Open up something in Notepad into paint.net, open up the hue and saturation. You may want to create your own from scratch, whatever you need to do. The easiest way I found for me was to find something like the straw. You might want to take perhaps maybe something else, your chaff or something like that, whatever, you know, it'll be really just tweaking things and getting what you want. But you know, for me, I think this is acceptable. It doesn't look anything like what we've already got on the map. You know, you want it to look a little bit different. So if you were perhaps maybe collecting grass is a much darker, thicker texture, so using something like the straw gives you, you know, something that we haven't already got. So I think this looks pretty good, you know. I would say alfalfa is quite a stringy sort of crop, so to have it look like this I think looks pretty good. You know, it's not too bad. I think that looks okay, for me at least. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I'm quite happy with that. So what we'll do now is I'm going to, off camera, I'll get some of this up together, and then we'll have a look at the actual script that I want to show you. It is a script that I have not created myself. It is one that somebody else has created, but we're going to have a bit of a tweak a bit with it, and then, you know, all credits go to that person, which I will put in the description and what have you when we get to it. But I'm going to just tweak a little script so that we can actually use this in the bunker to convert into silage. So I will see you in a little bit once we get to that point, and then we'll continue on from there. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're back on the desktop now, and what I want to do is just finish off. Basically, we've got our alfalfa, aka Luzerne, into the map, and you can see it was all working perfectly fine. We've harvested some of it. I actually finished up the field, well, most of the field, got a trailer full, and what I want to show you now is another way. We've obviously set it up as power feed for our cows, but if we want to use it as anything else, like for instance change it into silage, then we need another script that's going to be able to do that for us. Now I've played around with various different things, and I've come up with the CCM Mod, which is the corn cob mod. I believe that's what it stands for, I'm not entirely sure. That's been around for a little while now. It's really good mod if you're into that sort of the corn cob or whatever it's called setup. What I want to do is actually have a play with this particular script and then set it up so that I can use my alfalfa in the bunker and then convert that into silage. So we've got our script here and all the parts that we're going to need for it to work, hopefully. So we've got our add to bunker silo script. So if we open that up in Notepad++, big shout out to the guys who put this together. Credits to them for the script itself. So what we need to do is actually come through this particular script and then make a few changes here so that it will allow us to put in our Luzerne and then convert that into silage. So if we have a look through the script itself, we can come through here, and what we want to do is obviously have this to change our silo. This is going to be adding an additional fruit type, or field type I should say, to the bunker itself. Now one thing I will point out here, once you've made your choice between either chaff or alfalfa, aka Luzerne, you will not be able to then convert it back. So if you're going to put into the bunker itself one or the other, you must make sure that you have enough of whatever you're going to put in there. So if you're going to stick with chaff, for example, then that's what you're going to be stuck with basically. So once you start to fill it with chaff, that's all you're going to be able to put into there. If you want to then perhaps maybe use your, if you've got a large field or a lot of fields that you're going to be putting your alfalfa into, and you want to then use that to convert it into silage, then this is what we're going to be using to do that. And then once you've obviously put that into that bunker, you will be stuck using alfalfa to create your silage. But anyway, so we've got our script and it's a BGA silo type, so we're going to use a key binding to change between the two, which I'll show you once we get back into game. So we're going to make a couple of changes here to obviously allow us to do that. So if we come through the field types here, we've got our field type of chaff, and we've also got the CCM. Now I don't want CCM, what I want is Luzerne. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overwrite this here, and with keeping it in capitals, I'm going to type in there Luzerne. Then we come down and I need to change it again, so I'm going to highlight that, copy it. I'm going to come down to the part we've got down here as our next field type, and I'm going to change this one to Luzerne and this one as well to Luzerne. Okay, so now we've got that part changed, we need to then continue on down, checking through the script itself. So we've got all our info parts here, fermenting levels and all the rest of it. Now you need to make sure that when you go through this and make the changes that you don't miss anything, because otherwise obviously it won't work. So you might need to scroll through it a few times just to make sure that you've changed all of the field types appropriately. So we'll continue on down here. And we need to come down to our next part. So we've got some bits there, they're okay, we don't need to change anything there. Don't need to change anything there. So we need to change some parts down here. So field type, I need to change that. Change that. Actually, we need to change that and put that into lowercase. So we can type in Luzerne there, and then we will copy that, paste that in. Don't need to change anything there. Come on down. Compacting. So we need to change this one. We need to change that to Luzerne again in capitals. So we'll do like so. Come on down a bit further. Chaff silage, we've got all of that, that's fine. Come on down. All of that's okay. Don't need to change anything there. Okay, I think we've got everything we need to change. Just go back through the script one more time just to make sure. Should be okay, so don't need to change anything there. Like I say, you may need to scroll through this a few times and just make sure that you are changing everything appropriately. We don't want anything that's got CCM or CCM raw. We need to change that to the Luzerne. But you need to also make sure that you change it appropriately, whether it be uppercase or lowercase. So come back through, we've got that changed. We've got our Luzerne there, so that's good. Data string out. I think what we need to do is change that one to silage. There we go, not uppercase, lowercase. Silage, because our input is going to be Luzerne and our output is going to be silage, and this one is going to be chaff, grass, windwell, dry grass, windwell to silage. So we need to make sure that our in is Luzerne and our out is silage. So again, that's my mistake, and to make a small mistake like that can then make all the difference, because otherwise we would end up with, well, it wouldn't make any difference. It would put in Luzerne and stay as Luzerne, it wouldn't change. So we want it to change to silage. It probably would cause a conflict and the script wouldn't run anyway, but just to be sure there. So we've got that set up. It should be fine there. So we've got that one. That's all good. That should be fine there. Okay, so we need to go ahead and save the script. And then what I need to do is bring that over into the Thornton Farm map. So we'll go Maps, Scripts, and we'll copy that one over like so. Then we need to go into the actual mod desk for the CCM script itself. We need to bring over our extra source files text path file name. So we'll come back, open up the mod desk for Thornton Farm, we'll come down to our scripts and we will add that one in, and then we need to add in the actual path file name, so maps scripts, so it knows where it is. So we'll add that in like so. Then we also need to bring over the text for our BGA silo type. We don't need to worry about the CCM or CCM raw, just need the BGA silo type, so we'll copy that one over, bring that over, and we'll put that into our L10N section. We'll create a couple of lines just to separate everything. And we also need to bring over our input binding so it actually uses the appropriate key, which in this case would be the J key, to change the silo type. So we'll bring that over, create a couple of lines, put it on the end there like so. Okay, so we've got all of our parts there. We've made adjustments to the actual script, so we can close that down, save that, close that down. We've made the changes to the script itself and we've added that into the map. We've also adjusted the moddesk.xml for the map to accept those changes. So what we'll do now is we'll get back into game and we'll just test that out, and hopefully we should be okay. So I'll see you in a little bit when we get back in the game. Okay, so here we are now back into game again, and you can see I've got a trailer full of our alfalfa which we collected earlier. There we go, like so. I think it looks pretty good. You know, like I said before, you may need to make some changes and adapt the actual particles and fill planes to whatever suits you for what would represent alfalfa or Luzerne, whatever you want to call it, for you. So if we were to come over to the silo now, we can see I've added a new, with that new script in there, it's added a new section to the F1 menu, and we've got change silo type with the J key, and if we come down it shows us fill level chaff 0, compacting at 0, because obviously there's nothing in here at the moment. If I hit the J key, that will then change over fill level alfalfa to 0, and obviously if you change the text in your moddesk.xml to Luzerne, then it would show Luzerne, whatever you want to call your alfalfa, Luzerne, whatever. So if I change this back to chaff, I just want to show you, if we were to have it on chaff, I'll jump into the tractor here. If I now reverse into the actual bunker silo here, whatever you want to call that, the clamp. If I reverse into here now, we'll close that down so we can see what we're doing, and I was to try and empty this into the silo, it would not accept it, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we come into here now, obviously those that know, those that don't, you have to use the Control and I, the unload here function within your silos. So we'll do Control and I, and you'll see that it will attempt to unload and then stop, and nothing will show up on the ground at all. I'll just show you that again from the rear. So there we go, it attempts to unload but doesn't, and it doesn't actually reduce what you've got in your trailer because it's not actually taking anything out. So we can see that it doesn't accept alfalfa at the moment, and it won't until we change the silo type. So if I pull out of there and just bring up the F1 menu again and come back into the silo on foot, and if I then hit the J key, so it changes my text in the top right there, sorry, top left, to fill level alfalfa, and we'll jump back into the tractor again and we'll reverse back in again. Now if I actually use the unload here function, now I will say on Thornton Farm, the actual clamp here, the silo, whatever you want to call it, it's not been, I don't want to say set up wrong or whatever else, but the actual collisions I have found quite a few times when I've tried to fill this up, even with chaff, they do tend to bleed through the walls a little bit. So I would say keep whatever you're putting into here somewhere centralized in the middle of the actual clamp, silo, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is, and you can see here also it does actually show change silo type, so you can do it with inside the vehicle as well. So if you wanted to, you could come in here, hit the J key, and then change it to whatever you want down the bottom here without being on foot, but you know, whatever works for you. So now that we're in here, we're going to use the Control I to unload again, and you can see now it is actually coming out onto the floor, and it is showing our fill level going up in our menu here. So there we go, so it is actually showing that. So I'll just close the tailboard again there using the Control I function, And if I now disconnect the trailer, we can come back in. If we keep an eye on the menu here in the top left, you can see we've got our fill level alfalfa, all the 3s, and our compacting level is 0. If we keep an eye on that, and I will then drive over it, you can see that it does actually compact it. Excellent. So what I will do now is I'm just going to pause the video here, and what I'll do is I'll go and get a leveler, which I forgot to get, and I will show you that that works as well. So I'll be back in a little bit. So I've got a leveler. This is just the standard in-game one. So if you're using a modded version, I can't speak for that, but this is just the standard in-game one. So if we come into here, you can see that that does work perfectly fine, and it will push the alfalfa around absolutely no problem whatsoever. I'll bring up the F1 menu again. We can see that it is actually compacting at the same time here, so you can have all of the functions working exactly the same as if you were using chaff. So there we go. I don't think I've got enough, but what I will do is just see if I can compact this down enough. It might let me blank it, I'm not sure. Just run over this a bit quick and just see if it will. It might do, never know. I don't think there's enough in there, but we'll try it. No, not quite enough. So what I will do, oh it does, it actually says blanket silo, there you go, missed that top of the F1 menu. So now if I actually blanket this, you can see it does blanket perfectly fine, no problem whatsoever, and it shows it's fermenting at 1%. So what I'll do is I'll pause again now, and then once it's completely fermented I'll come back and we'll have a look and check to see what's in here. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so now that it's completely fermented, it's showing fermenting silage 100%. So we'll open the actual silo here, and there we go. You can see we've clearly got silage shown up. We haven't lost anything, it's still showing all the 3s. So we've actually added a script in to change the silo type so that it will actually allow the alfalfa to be tipped into the actual clamp here, and tipped in the alfalfa, and then put a blanket over it, converted it or fermented it into silage, and there we go, and we can then use that for our cows or whatever else we want to use it for. So there we go, how to put alfalfa into a map, get all the foliage set up correctly and all the rest of it, set it up so that we can also use it as cow feed. I won't do that in this particular video, but you just basically tip it into the trough over there, or whatever map you're planning on putting this into. Just tip it in as you would normally for any of the other field types, and it will then show up in the power feed. As you can see there, it clearly states alfalfa. Now again, the text will be different if you choose to call it Luzerne, but you need to set that up in your moddesk.xml for the map. And then yeah, we've set up our particle animations, fill planes, all the rest of it, and we've then added in a script, or converted the CCM corn cob, whatever that mod is called. I'm sure it's corn cob, but I'm not entirely sure what it stands for. But the CCM mod, we've converted the script so that it will allow us to then use the alfalfa in the bunker silo here, the silage clamp, and then ferment it. We've put it in, compacted it, all the rest of it, and then fermented it into silage. So there we go, all sort of sorted out and working in the map. Anybody who wants to have a play around with this, really hope that this was some information to you and helpful in any way. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.